Right, morning, welcome. And on that note, thought that that might just appeal to you, Ed, a little bit, seeing that I think this topic was actually designed, well, requested by you. Let's not say designed, but requested by you. So yeah, Shania, and so reflection on, unfortunately, the state of the world, I think in many cases. So Ed, as it's your topic, I'm going to kick it straight across to you and see what your thoughts are on money.
Yeah, I kind of threw this one in here, hoping that Trevor might be here because I know our views are diametrically opposed. And in the South African chats earlier on, I talked about two songs, and songs really sort of resonate with me. And when I thought about money, strangely enough, I thought about Edwin Starr and War. He's got a record called War. And he says, what's war good for? Absolutely nothing. And that's what I think about money. It's good for absolutely nothing because it has no intrinsic value. Money is a mechanism of exchange. And you exchange money for goods. Oh, I've got Martin joining us. And now Martin is known as the money man. Aren't you, Martin? You can't, can you hear us, Martin? He can't hear us yet. Anyhow,
Morning.
Morning, Martin. I was just saying, Martin, you're the money man, aren't you?
Yeah, I deal with investments and pensions, if that's what.
But he's called the money man, so it's good he's joined us. So for me, money has absolutely no value whatsoever. So it's got no intrinsic value. You can't eat it, especially now they've made it out of plastic in this country, and I can't eat it because they put animal fat in it. Our £5 notes and our £10 notes had animal fat in them, so I refuse to use them, which is great because I don't buy a round of drinks now. So it has no value, and yet people seem to want to collect it. They just hoard it. They have loads of it, and there's a guy who works for Barclays Bank. He's the CEO of Barclays Bank, and you know, he's not an entrepreneur. It's an established business. The business works because it's there and people have built it up over the years. And he gets paid a salary of £1 million or more. And a couple of years ago, there was a bit of an uproar because he got a £5 million bonus. If you're earning £1 million a year, how do you spend £5 million? You know, you can't exactly buy a Ferrari every day of the week, can you? You can't drink £5 million worth of gin and tonics, or in my case, Brewdog beer. You can't eat, you know, £5 million worth of pizzas. And actually, I've just looked it up on my phone. And this year, despite the bank making a loss, I think it was, he's still got a £4 million bonus. So what do you do with all that money? You know, you're not going to take it with you. You know, yeah, you need a little bit of money to exchange it so that I can get bread and I can get vegetables and I can get my Brewdog beer and I can buy a pair of what you guys call tackies or we call trainers so I can go running. But what else do I want? What would I want with £5 million? And then you think about people who've got assets of, say, £1 billion. You couldn't spend that in 10 lifetimes. So why do people want that money? And I think it's because that money does something to satisfy some need they have. And actually they're needy because actually they're so poor, all they've got is money. And I consider myself to be one of the richest men in the world because I've got my two girls love me. And when I sit on the sofa with my arm around, I think I've told the story before, my younger daughter got up in the middle of the night. I got up with her. And the night before I watched a program about millionaires. And they wheeled their children out at parties, and that's all they saw. This couple had 6 nannies to look after the children when they moved around the world. They never saw their children. And Charlotte woke up about 3 in the morning. I went downstairs, I sat on the sofa with her, and Holly woke up about 6 and she came down, and I was sitting on the sofa watching some stupid cartoon I've seen about 10,000 times with my arms around my daughters, and I was the richest man in the world. So for me, as long as I've got enough of those little bits of whatever it is to exchange what I do for what I need, bread, Brewdog beer, Castle Lager if I'm in South Africa, my airfare to South Africa, I'm happy. I don't need £1 million. I don't need 5 million quid. I don't need £1 billion or $1 billion. I'm never going to spend it. And actually, when you buy things, if you buy yourself a nice Audi A8, you feel happy for 6 weeks. It's the same with any asset you buy. You tend to feel happy with it for about 6 weeks. If you have an experience like walking from Glasgow to Cape Wrath, you're happy for your lifetime after that. So yeah, money, absolutely no good for anything.
Thanks, Ed. Yeah, now you know why he calls himself a recovering accountant, because you know, it definitely doesn't line up with some of his profession, previous profession. Yeah. So sorry, let me just shut this thing up. Yeah, it is interesting. You know, I had a quote that was credited to one of our local gentlemen who's apparently very wealthy, was when he was asked what's the difference between $1 million and $1 billion. Well, he said it's actually really quite easy. He said, you know, if I give my wife 1,000 every day and she spends 1,000 every day, and in 3 years she spent $1 million. Said if to spend $1 billion, it would take her 333 years. So, you know, I don't have a problem with getting rid of my billions just yet. So, Frank, yeah, lots of good sayings accredited to the Scots when it comes to money. So,
yeah, thank you. Well, I didn't know what the topic was when I came on here, so I've been scribbling a few notes while Edward were talking. I think you and I, Edward, think about money a wee bit differently. I think money is an attitude. It's not real. You know, as you say quite rightly, you can't take it with you. But it's an attitude, and I think that most people think of money as security. So when you say something like, when you say something like, as long as I've got enough money to, you know, have a roof over my head and have my Brewdog and different things like that, for somebody else, having enough money will mean just being able to buy something out the shops and survive for that day. For somebody like Bill Gates, having money will mean I need 3 houses. With a job that I do, I just need 3 houses. Whether we agree with that or whether we don't, his perception, his attitude to money is that he needs 3, 10, 20 houses. And so money means different things to different people, and that's why I say it's an attitude. I did a survey 15 years ago with 1,000 people answered the survey, and I asked them, and I was desperately trying to find the document to see some of the comments. I asked them what their attitude to money was, and a lot of them said it's terrible. You know, I don't want money. A lot of them said it makes me feel guilty to have too much money when there's so much happening in the world. A lot of them said that they learned from their parents what money was all about. So if their parents were avid savers, then they would probably end up being a saver. If their parents were terrible spenders, you know, they would just spend on anything and have no savings at all, then they would do the same kind of thing. So it was really interesting, and it was an interesting survey that I did. And if I manage to find it, then I'll maybe send it through to you. As I say, some amazing comments. And I used to do public speaking. I still do public speaking, but I used to speak on cruise ships on lots of different topics. I was a guest speaker, so I didn't work for the cruise line, so I did lots of different topics. And one of the topics was all about money. And I asked this question to the audience of maybe about 200, 250 people. I said, if I gave you, I can't, but if I gave you £10 million, what would you say? Now, a lot of them would say, I don't want £10 million. What would I do with £10 million? I don't want £10 million. I said, well, let me ask you something else. If I said I could give you £10 million and you could do anything with it you want, would you take it? And they said, a lot of them again said, no, I wouldn't take it. What, as Edward says, what would I buy? 1 car, 10 cars? Why would I want £10 million? And then I said to them, but hold on, you didn't listen to what I said. You can do anything with it you want. And they said, and I emphasized, so you can give it to your favorite charity if you don't want it. Oh, I would love £10 million, yes, because I could then give it to these local charities, these this, that I would leave some to my grandchildren, blah, blah, blah. And so suddenly in that instant, their attitude towards money changed. It went from being, this is something it's embarrassing, I don't want that amount of money, to something that I can do good with the money that I've got if I want to, if I choose to. And the same goes for Bill Gates. Love him or hate him and his wife have decided they've got lots of money. They're never going to go be poor, but they've decided to give a lot of it away. And again, love Bill Gates and many others like him, Warren Buffett and people like that. Love them or hate them, they are doing good with their money in their eyes. You might give it to some other kind of charities, but they will do good in their eyes with their money. And I think money can be a status for some people. They love the idea of having money, and other people think it's a terrible thing to have lots of money. But I'll just end on saying, I think money is an attitude. It's important we have it because it gives us some kind of security, whether you've got £1 in your pocket, which will buy you a cup of coffee, and that's all you've got, or whether you've got £10 million in the bank, which will keep you in the security that you feel you need for yourself. So that's what I think about money.
Thanks, Frank. There were clearly no South Africans on that cruise ship with you, because I think you would have been run over in the stampede. I'm not too sure that too many of them would have said no, thank you. So yeah, it's really interesting how our mindset and our attitudes are formed by, as you said, the way we grow up and the environments we're in. So Martin, welcome on board. Glad to have you here on your first Wisdoms chat. I'm not sure if you realize what you've walked into here, but as Edward said, you clearly, and I can see in your background there, keep calm and keep investing, or something along those sort of lines. I can see part of your board there behind you.
Yeah, well, a lot of investors have had to have kept calm recently. Yeah. Where do I start? God, what a meeting for inspiration I've dropped into. I love money, always have loved money, always love what money can do for me, my family, and for others. I see all the happiness it does give to families with security, with being able to help their kids, the bank of mum and dad, things of that nature. So I suppose I come at it from a completely different angle, really. My mother said she knew I'd get on well, because I used to, in my days where I had 3 older brothers and we lived in a 2-up, 2-down dolly house in the middle of Plymouth. Didn't have much. My father worked in the dockyard. My mother worked 3 jobs just to bring up the family. And every time I got my pocket money, I always used to save it and count it in front of my brothers. They always used to spend theirs. So I suppose it's been sort of like bred into me for a number of years. But it can be an ugly thing, especially if you haven't got it. It can be a joyous thing if you have it and you are able to influence something. I'm a Rotarian here in Plymouth. I've been both the Drake president and the Plymouth president. And, for those who don't know, Rotary is the biggest charity in the world. And the biggest commodity there is time, I suppose, being able to spend that time. But invariably, the money, the donations, the contributions does help try to equalise society sometimes. but it also equally, it's a tool that is very divisive, the have and have nots. Where I come from is that, you know, obviously there's a lot of people I deal with that work very hard, that earn a lot of money. And I play that monopoly board game of financial life. And basically I just try to help people achieve what they want to achieve. And I've been doing this for over 30 years. Nothing wrong with capitalism, as long as you understand the game. It's not there designed to hammer other people. It's just designed to give you self-fulfillment, you know, a lot of people earn money just to justify themselves. I agree with, you know, Edward. I've got 2 children, but, you know, for kids growing up today, it's very, very difficult. I wouldn't like to be growing up today. When you look at the average house price, you've got to be earning, you know, 35, 40,000 pounds even to be considered to buy a house. So there's a lifetime of renters there. I really didn't want my kids to do that. So I bought a fair bit of property, and you could be looking at the worst of the worst, actually taking those house prices away from other people. I don't know, but, you know, I don't want to walk in, you know, in anybody else's shoes. And, you know, I certainly don't expect people to walk in my shoes, because we're all different animals. I don't know if that really cuts the mustard. I don't know. But, you know, I look after people. You know, I locally, I look after over 30 million. I'm a partner of a national firm of financial advisors. We look after 1 in 5 financial advisors. We run assets in excess of 70 billion. So if you're looking at the worst perpetrator, I suppose it's me.
Great, thanks, Martin. Yeah, look, it's really not about cutting the mustard. I think it's, as you say, as you started off, you know, it's about really engaging with people who have a common, let's put it this way, a common mindset, but not necessarily a common thoughts around that mindset. So, you know, we like to engage, we like to banter, we like to test each other's beliefs in some ways, I suppose, about different topics without it being confrontational. It's really about just broadening our experience and encouraging us to think differently, perhaps, about different topics. So
I would like to challenge everybody here.
Please.
Would you like to put your hand up if you have your own property? When you bought your own property, I don't know, it could be still mortgage, but when you make a mortgage payment or when you buy the property, does it make you feel good? Because there's that sense of achievement, and that sense of achievement comes with security, comes with a lot of other things, and that's not a bad thing.
Great, thanks, Martin. I know Ed didn't put his hand up because he's busy getting rid of everything he owns. So
he's selling on eBay, I bet you.
Yeah, I do. You know, I felt happiest when I was in my tent on Dartmoor with no possessions. And actually talking about, sorry, I've gone off topic a bit, but talking about the problems of young people. My daughter, before she was 24, bought her house because she was just single-minded about saving, and she scrimped and she saved. She was a bit like you, Martin, with her pocket money. And she moved into a one room with her boyfriend in a shared house, and she hates mess. And imagine the mess in the kitchen in a shared house with a load of blokes, until she got her deposit for her house. She's moved into her house a couple of weeks before her 24th birthday, so she achieved her dream. It's a beautiful house, doesn't need much doing to it, but she's got, and it's just her dream. That was her dream. That's not my dream.
Now, I know, but we all
had that dream.
Yeah, the thing is, we all play the game at some stage. We always, when we look at something and we make a purchase, you know, it's not. I hear what you say about the tent and all the rest of it, but that's experiences. That's that sort of like enjoyment, but enjoyment manifests itself in a number of ways, doesn't it? And it's what makes you feel happy. If it makes you feel happy in a tent in the middle of Dartmoor with the wind rattling around your ears, in that sense of, you know, feeling part of the land and everything, that's great. If you're having a nice restaurant at the top of a 28th floor building overlooking a bay somewhere and thinking this is beautiful, then that's enjoyment. But it's you know, money is sometimes a necessary evil. The same as, you know, we could even just branch out into religion if you want to. But it's very, very close, isn't it?
It's interesting, and I like to challenge Ed when he says that, because guess what? He wouldn't have been on a hill on Dartmoor in his tent if he didn't have money, because he would never have gotten to the place where he could go and do that in the first place. and he wouldn't be
walked. Edward would have walked, that's for sure. Or run.
No, for sure. But he also wouldn't be doing these ultra marathons around the world if he hadn't had some money to be able to help him do that. So, as much as you might hate it, you still need it.
I bet you he had a lovely tent though, a nice expensive tent, Gore-Tex tent or something.
No, he's got a tiny little one-man camper. Yeah,
£125 from a shop in Exeter.
That much?
Yeah, but actually, talking about restaurants, I've also really enjoyed, you know, that revolving restaurant in Durban, going up the top there and enjoying that. I don't dislike money. I just find it strange that people want to hoard so much of it and not spend it.
Well, I ought to introduce you to Bitcoin then. That would blow your mind, Edward.
See, the trouble with Bitcoin is it uses up so much computing power, it's bad for the environment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you definitely can't keep investing with Bitcoin. The roller coaster ride is something else. Anyway, Lee, over to you. Let's see what your thoughts are on money.
Yeah, so that's what I love about Wisdom's Chats, is that you just get these different angles that come from different places, and it creates a picture. And I could identify with absolutely everybody, because I feel like there's been a point in my life at various stages that have reflected that perspective. And I actually just read a blog that I wrote a little while ago on my relationship with money. And I realized it's so my whole sort of ethos was, I want to make a difference. I want to change the world. And so that was all about serving and giving and not getting much in return. So I worked for NGOs, I worked for church organizations. My husband was a minister. And when they talk about being poor as a church mouse, well, yes, that is a real thing. And actually it didn't bother me. You know what I mean? It didn't bother me. It was like, I was living this fulfillment of something that I felt like I was really giving. And then what happened is I gave to the point of my capacity, and I wasn't getting anything back, and I actually burnt myself out. And that was a huge lesson. It was a huge lesson, because, and I know I'm not, it sounds like I'm not talking about money, but what happened was, because there was no return, I had to rethink. One of the things I had to rethink was my relationship with money. Do I not think that I'm worth the value of my labor? And remembering that I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a minister's wife, and I'm working for these NGOs. So I'm working hard and I'm getting nothing for it. So no financial reward. And so no acknowledgement that says you have the value to this amount, that society acknowledges your contribution. And when I started my business, I noticed in myself that as I grew in self-confidence, as I grew in my sense of self-worth, as I grew in my sense of the value that I was offering, what I could ask in return for those services also grew. And so it was an interesting realization in terms of this emotional, and it's this emotional connection to money. So yes, that can become an addiction, and I get that. But I also, if you live in a third world country or in a developing country, you have to have a very realistic understanding of money, and you're impacted by it in an ongoing, it's a daily occurrence. So you're confronted with your have and other people's have nots constantly. And one of the things that I did is that I went and spent the weekend with a friend of mine in a shack. And well, it wasn't quite a shack. It was a 2-roomed house that it did have walls, but I slept with her. There was only one bed. So if she was going to have me as a guest, we slept in the same bed. But she explained to me the journey of what it meant to arrive from the rural areas into this township, that you arrived with nothing. So you built a tin shack, and that was shared toilets, and every block had their toilet and their key. They had a key for their shared toilet, and a tap that you could also use for that block. And then you would build up a little bit of money to be able to move literally. So there was a shack area, like suburb. And then you could build up a little bit of money and you could move across the road and you would get a 1-room place. And then you could build up a little bit of money and then you could go to a 2-room place. And that, hopefully what would happen in that 2-room place, which is where my friend was now, is as you built up money, you could extend, because you had enough land that you could extend. So for me, when I see that money is about choice. Money is about freedom. Money is about opportunity to lift yourself up out of the mire. And so I think if we can talk about money from a point of privilege, but it means a lot in that journey to, so that was one experience. And then the other thing that I just want to mention in terms of money, meaning of money to me, is I want to live long. I want to live long, and I don't know that I'm going to have the resources, the energy, and the time to keep earning at the pace that I am. So the 50 years that still lie ahead of me, I have this driving thing. I don't want to live with my kids. And it's a very real thing, because my mom lives with us. My mom and dad lived with us, and for 10 years, and my mom continues to live with us, and it's fine. We've been living in a 3-generational home for however long. Now it's two generations, and it's fine, it's working. I don't want to do that. So I have a very personal reason for needing to sustain a reasonable lifestyle until I live a good life, a good long life. There you go. So that's my story. Some part of my story of money, because it's complicated. And I say the last thing. I want to add one last thing about rich people. We can be tough on rich people, but I've worked in a church and I've lived in church environments, and we are very tough on rich people. Very, very tough. But let me tell you, when the roof of the church needs fixing, or we need donations for such and such a project. Who do we go to? And so we have to be very careful about our hypocrisies around wealth and what it means, and those kinds of things.
Right, thanks, Lee. Yeah, some great insights and stories there. Yeah, it is interesting, you know, and you know, I've worked in various different environments as well, and one of them, you know, being in the networking game for for more than 20 years, and at one point we used to see a lot of NGOs, non-governmental type operations, or people who are trying to establish these sort of non-profit organizations that are supposedly going out to help and uplift the communities and so on, would come into these networking sessions, and they'd all be looking for money. And then you dig into it a little bit deeper, and you actually find that in essence what they're really trying to do is put bread and butter on their own tables, which is sad, because, you know, I think one of the real problems with some of these environments, I don't want to generalize too much, generalizations are dangerous things, but is you know, they're people who are looking for an avenue simply to earn, and the excuse, if I can use that word, is that they going out to help other people, but 95% plus of whatever revenue they're taking in is simply survival money for themselves. And you know, you can't really help someone if you can't help yourself. You know, and I think the real trick is to get yourself into a position where you can help yourself, where you know you're stable, where you know you're capable. I mean, you know, Frank spoke about the Gates and the Gates Foundation. I mean, the millions and millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, that go into things like vaccine programs around the world and other amazing outreaches that people like that do. You know, the Buffett Foundation has donated, what, I think 31 billion or something to a trust, you know, for the upliftment of others. Couldn't do that if he didn't have the money, quite simply, if he hadn't helped himself. And yes, it's taken him 50, 60 years to get to the point where he can do that, but does it matter? Does it really matter? They're now in a position to do all sorts of amazing things. And yes, not everybody who earns that kind of money does that kind of thing. I mean, we chatted about it briefly in some of our other sessions. You know, I think the bankers are one good example. I think, you know, some of the footballers in the UK are probably another good example. You know, there are a few that do some good stuff with the millions of pounds that they earn for kicking a ball around a field. I'm not too sure why anybody wants to pay them to do that, to be perfectly honest. Being a good South African, white South African, you know, soccer is not really in my wheelhouse, but I prefer rugby. But still don't know why you want to pay people, you know, millions to play that game either, or any game for that matter. So you know, Lee spoke about value and the value that you're adding back to society, and I think for me that's really key. And so the question is, you know, how are people like the bankers, like the sports people, how are they really adding value back to society, and why are they getting remunerated in the way that they are? Would be an interesting question. I think it's a very different question when you look at a Bill Gates or a you know, an Elon Musk or a, you know, so someone like that. You know, I believe they do add significant value with their innovations and their developments and their ideas, and yes, they get rewarded for it. So I don't have a problem with that. But it's a fascinating topic. I'm sure we could go on. Well, we've already gone well past our 30 minutes, but it's flown past in the blink of an eye.
I just think people might have a different perspective if that comfort blanket of the state wasn't there. If you've got to pick up plastic bottles at the age of 6, 7, 8 years old to sell, to just get money, to just survive, a lot of us are very, very lucky that we have that state comfort blanket. And without that comfort blanket, I think people would look at money a little bit differently.
Yeah, unfortunately, Martin, in our country, that blanket is rather threadbare and full of holes. And if you can find a few threads, you might be lucky, but it doesn't exist in this part of the world, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know. We're actively funding an enterprise in the townships at the moment for kids in food banks, and even the local supermarkets that give away, you know, what food goes out of date and things like that. Even that stopped. So it's more needed than it's ever been. So
Absolutely.
I think Lee made a really good point, though, or you, Lee, made a really good point, and that is having money. Some people think of that in relation to self-worth, but it's really not. That's other people's perception of what you are. I mean, you look at people, again, lover or hater, but Mother Teresa, who I think, from what I read, wasn't a well-off woman. She was very poor. She didn't have anything at all, but her self-worth was there for everybody. You know, she felt worthy. But I've come across quite a few people in relationships where one works and one doesn't, similar to what you were saying, Lee. And the person who doesn't work to earn money, they still work because they're a housewife, a house husband, whatever. They very often feel lack of self-worth because they're not getting the monetary reward that the other partner is getting. And I've coached people in relationships, and that's a big one for a lot of people, is that they don't feel, you know, they're given money from their partner instead of earning it. And they are earning it because it's a partnership, it's a dual thing. But self-worth is a big thing for a lot of people, and why they want to earn their own money.
Yeah, and I agree, Frank. And I think, unfortunately, you know, the world has skewed that perception of what self-worth really is, isn't it? They've tied it to money or possessions or things like that, where in fact, you know, that's really just perhaps an element of it, and maybe even not an important one. You know, it's so if you can give somebody, and I think that's where Ed is great with the work that he does with his orphanages and charities and things like that. You know, is that you know, adding value in terms of showing those individuals that they do have worth. They are, you know, they do have a place, and they can, you know, engage, and building that intrinsic what am I looking for? Self-image, I think is the word I'm looking for. Is I actually do have value. I can participate. I can be part of something. You know, I might not be earning the millions or even the thousands, you know, but I think that's a very important aspect of modern life that has been perverted by the media.
And what Ed said is 100% right. You know, he feels like the richest man in the world. And as I say, you and I, Ed, have had a good long one-to-one and hit it off very well. And I know a lot of the stuff you do, which you don't tell anybody about. And that makes you're the kind of person that makes you feel, listen, if I had this, or I had £1 million in the bank, I would choose this every time. So people like yourself do get some self-worth from what you do. And it's only to be applauded, because a lot of people wouldn't do what you do. So
100%. Okay, folks, I think
so I'd like to pick up that topic for next week, if that's okay. This idea of self-worth and the value of our work, and how is that acknowledged, and however you understand work. So our self-worth and value, and how that is acknowledged. Let's talk about that next week.
Right, fantastic. Thanks, Lee. Thanks, everyone. We are back on at 2 p.m. UK time in the US. So if you have a gap and you want to join us on the same ID, we're across in the US at 2 p.m. UK time. Otherwise, we're back 8 a.m. every weekday morning South African time, which is still 6 a.m. your time, I think, until the end of the month, when it might become 7 a.m. But otherwise, we'll see you next week. Have a great time, and chat soon.
Another day,
See you later.
$1.
bye, folks.
Bye.